to our Let Us Talk It session for webinar, or we call it rather ZIPINAR, because we are zipping two wonderful topics in one session. So both the 30-minute long topics. Um, Thank you for joining us and hope you will be enjoying this session today as we have two great topics to be discussed by our two wonderful speakers. So first off, we will be starting with the COVID and careers. So discussing about the impact of COVID-19 on job market. So dealing with the challenges and a bouncing back, resume writing tips, interview preparation strategy, cracking the interview. So this is for each and everyone landing a job despite the pandemic. This will be given to us by an HR leader with experience across a gamut of human resources functions in the IT sector. Also with a strong background in corporate HR activities, organizational development, and effective communication at all levels. And she is also a French language expert, aside from the English and Hindi language. So here with us, our wonderful and great speaker, Shika Gupta, over to you.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be amongst all of you today. And I thought the most interesting topic of today's times is COVID and careers, right? COVID has disrupted the entire market scenario, right? We have never seen the IT or any sort of industry behaving in the manner it is behaving today. So that's how I thought I should talk to all of you about that and your audience as well. So let me begin. COVID, till about 2019, December 2019, things were going fine when we were hit by this pandemic, right? Which brought a complete disruption in our lives, right? In our careers, I mean, overall, right? So here we are today to talk about the job market. I have in my
I'm just sorry to interrupt you, Shikha. Is your video on by any chance?
I wasn't given the permission to switch on the video.
You can, I think, right now.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Just
sorry
a moment.
for the
just a moment. I just need to choose a virtual background, and I think I'll be good. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. I mean, I can see you. Yes.
Yes. Is this okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So today we are going to talk about the job market, right? Like I was mentioning, COVID has disrupted our lives, our jobs, our careers, everything, right? The whole family setup. Now, today we're going to talk about what impact it has had. In my own network or in my own industry, I have seen thousands and thousands of people losing their jobs. And it was not because they were not qualified or they were not good performers or they were at the bottom of the pile and so on and so forth, or the companies were going through some cost optimization. That was not the reason. It's just that the pandemic brought so many challenges, right? Projects being on hold, customer demands reducing, and hence, the job market got impacted. And it happened across sectors. It's not specific to the IT industry or non-IT industry. It impacted the entire world, the entire job market. So how do we deal with it, right? There are two ways to deal with something like this. One, you can be, I have seen people in my own circle getting depressed, saturated, frustrated, losing hope, right? Facing anxiety issues, going into mental health issues, right? That's one part of the audience or the job seeker market. The other part is they said, no, I'm going to fight it out. I'm going to pick up myself back and start applying for different jobs across different organizations. There's a third category who said, if not a full-time job, let me be open. Let me be open to doing freelancing, to doing interventions, to doing small projects, to doing small assignments till I land up in a full-time job, right? So it's a big challenge, right? Losing a job is not easy. Most of us, or some of us, are bread earners of the family, right? You need that monthly salary to run the house. So 3 to 4 things that I suggest to my network or people who are in my community and my friend circle is: one, you don't have to get into depression or anxiety issues. You have to fight it out, like I just said. And you have to be flexible in terms of what kind of assignments you're looking at, right? You may not get your dream job because the number of jobs went down, the number of opportunities went down when the pandemic just happened. There was a hiring freeze. There was a scarcity of talent pool, right? Most of the companies had stopped hiring. We were waiting and watching to see what the pandemic has to bring onto the table. So be flexible in terms of what you're looking at. A short-term assignment, a short project, or an intervention, or a freelancing assignment is the way to progress ahead in life, rather than saying, feeling depressed and, taking drastic steps. I have seen people consuming, medicines and pills to overcome these mental health issues. That's not advisable. We have to keep moving in the right direction, keep trying till we succeed, right? So that would be my advice to the job seekers or people who've lost their job, especially the young professionals. See, on what has happened on the campus hiring front, right? All these campuses, the youth, a lot of companies retracted the offers, right? The offers were pulled back in certain cases. In some companies, and I purposely am not going to take any names because it's not right to do that. A lot of companies withdrew internships, right? Withdrew offers of full-time MBAs, IT engineers, right? And this is that tender age when the person is just about 23, 24, 25 years of age, right? Just doesn't know what to do, feels devastated, right? He's had big hopes, big dreams, and suddenly he's nowhere. So my advice to that particular section or segment of job seekers is not to get depressed, but to keep yourself flexible, to open yourself to multiple different types of job opportunities or assignments. Yeah, that would be my advice to the young professionals. Now, coming on to the next section of what I would want to talk about is how do you land up into your dream job? So there are 3 steps to do that. First is building a very good resume or a world-class resume or a brand document that sells you. Second thing is, how do you prepare for an interview, right? What are these things that you have to keep in mind if you have to crack the interview? Third is, on the actual day when you're actually sitting for this conversation with a corporate, right, face to face with an interviewer, what are the things that you have to keep in mind? So let me start with the first piece, which is building a world-class resume. A resume is your brand document. A resume represents you, right? So what are the things that we should keep in mind? I think the first thing is it has to highlight whatever your notable achievements are. What do you want to be known as? I may have, 10 years of experience across different sections in HR, areas in HR, but what is it that I would want to highlight in my resume? So one is a proper highlight in every resume. What do you want to be known as? What do you want the industry to know you as? Second is talk about your achievements, notable achievements, not in very long paragraphs, but short and crisp sentences which make sense, right? The person reading it is able to grasp quickly, saying that, oh yes, these are the 1, 2, 3 highlights of this person, what she has achieved. And those highlights should be around tangible stuff, in terms of what kind of revenue improvement were you able to bring, what kind of customer satisfaction scores were you able to achieve. So depending on the profile you were playing, say if you're a sales/BD, business development executive, right? What kind of target numbers have you achieved, right? So achievements should always be tangible numbers, data, facts, and figures, which, quickly rings a bell in the mind of the interviewer. Third thing is, it is very important to look at the length of the resume. I still see in today's world, resume which are 3 pages long or 2.5 pages long, which doesn't make sense. An ideal resume, though there is no ideal length, but still an ideal length of the resume should be anything between 1.5 to 2 pages, right? And it should be a nice branded document of you. Fourth thing is you should organize the sections in your resume properly, right? What comes first? A lot of people write their first job as the first highlight and their current job as the last highlight. So chronology is very important. Your current role should be your first highlight on the resume, followed by the other roles you've played in the past, right? In your education section, please highlight what is your topmost achievement. It could be a leadership activity that you did at your campus. It could be a project which won an award, or it could be your CSAT score or aggregates, right? Percentages. Please highlight that quickly. So from chronology to education, employment, highlighting achievements, ordering the sections properly, keeping the resume length in mind. I think these tips are very important, right? Last but not the least, and most of the job seekers, my friends over here, make that mistake. Please spell check your resume. A resume which has spelling mistakes is a complete put off. I'm telling you, no HR person would want to look at a resume which has spelling mistakes in it, or the English is incorrect, or the language, you're talking about yourself in a third person, right? Right. So it has to have the right language, the right tone, the right spellings, which makes it stand apart, right? So that's another very important aspect of building a resume. A resume is a walking, talking document which describes you. And also, if you are a professional with, multi-skills and you're applying for a job which has one of the skills that you possess, please tweak the first page of the resume to suit yourself for that role, right? Make yourself marketable for that job, right? Highlight those sections of your resume which are matching with the job description. There is high probability that you will get a call from the recruiter to say, oh, look, you look like a good fit. Let's talk about it. Let's understand your profile better. So I think if we keep these tips in mind, we build a good resume. The first call that you would get from any organization would be much faster than, just having a Word document, which doesn't make too much sense, which is not organized, which is not neat. I think in my mind, those would be very simple tips that the job seekers should follow. Now, after you have built this fantastic resume, right? What should be the application process? I have come across so many people, guys, who randomly, go to these job portals. It could be Dice, Monster, Naukri.com, Indeed, and just apply for jobs randomly. I don't think so we should do that. We should carefully pick and choose where we are best suited for and apply for those jobs only. I think that makes a lot of sense. So what I'm hinting at is quality over quantity, right? The quality of jobs that you apply for, where you think you are an 80% or a 90% or 100% fit, is very important. Just don't randomly apply for jobs. The world-class resume that you have built, also please circulate it within your network, your ex-colleagues, or your circle of influence, right? Who could get you this first interview call. So those two steps are very important. Now, coming to how do you prepare for an interview, right? So now your document is ready. You're all set to just walk in for that interview. So what kind of preparation do you need? In my mind, there are a couple of things that we should keep in mind. Number one, when you are actually going for an interview, please study the job description properly, right? What is it that the role demands, right? And prepare pointers around it. What have you done in your career span? How can you substantiate what is written in the job description by highlighting your experience, highlighting your achievements and highlighting any statistics that you may want to present, right? So it's very important to understand the job description. Next is, I think it's also very important to be dressed for success, to dress very appropriately, right? The kind of, if the role that you're applying for demands a formal attire, please be dressed that way. It makes a lot of impression on the mind of the interviewer, right? It conveys your attitude, it conveys your seriousness towards the role, it conveys your seriousness towards the organization, right? So dress for success. It's very important to have the right attire, the right grooming, right, which gives positive signals to the interviewer. After you're dressed for success, your body language plays a big role, right? The way you walk into the interview room, the way you do that first handshake with the interviewer, the way you greet the interviewer counts a lot, right? After you sit down, what kind of body language do you display in the interview? Are you nervous? Are you biting your fingers? Are you biting your nails? Are you nervous? So confidence is very important, right? So please try and maintain a positive body language, which gives right signals to the interviewer, right? That you're open for discussion, you're enjoying the conversation, you're not flustered, you're not nervous, you're not looking for words. I think that is very important. After your grooming, your body language plays a big role. Another point is, whichever company you're applying for, right? Please study about the organization. What is it into? What are the products? What are the services? What are the USPs of that organization? Do some homework, right? Before you sit for the interview. Show interest to the interviewer as to why would you want to be a part of XYZ? What excites you? Why have you been following that organization? Why are you there sitting there for the interview? Not because you're jobless, you do not have anything else to do, so you're here for an interview. No, that's a complete no. Show interest, study about the organization, do your homework. That gives signals to the interviewer that you are a long-term candidate, you are signed up for their organization, and there is a reason why you're sitting in that chair. So it's very important to do that piece of work. I think we are good with interview preparation, right? So you have your world-class document, you have your confidence on, you are dressed for success, your body language is important, you have done enough and more research about the company, and you know what the job description contains. So you're prepared with your data, experience, highlights, and statistics. Fantastic. I think that's the preparation you need, a positive mental makeup to top it all. That's my recipe of success. Now, on the day of interview, okay, most of us, what happens is we're very confident, we're very sure about what we want to say, how we want to say, till the time we arrive in that so-called hot seat, right? So you're sitting over there and you're kind of nervous, a little bit hassled, a little bit conscious, right, as to what's going to happen next. So a couple of tips from my side, and that's what I have observed, and a lot of people do that. Just number one, just because I am needy or I don't have a job or I'm desperate or I have to make it, right? Lot of candidates oversell. Please do not do that. Don't oversell, don't over exaggerate, present the data as is. It is perfectly okay to say, I don't know, but I can learn, I can upskill myself. If given an opportunity, I can deep dive and I can perform, right? It's absolutely all right to say you don't know. Don't say you have done X, because once you start speaking a lie, right, and the person sitting opposite to you is smart enough to catch all of this. Nobody is foolish, right? So don't oversell, don't exaggerate, don't twist data or facts. Some people just oversell. I have done this. It doesn't. You have to substantiate whatever you have done. Please substantiate with data points, right? And it's, like I said, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'm capable of learning it, picking it up, performing it, and delivering the results, right? Second thing, I think what we should keep in mind is, it's, I mean, understanding the job role is very important, right? A lot of job descriptions are not written very neatly. It's perfectly okay to ask the interviewer, what are your expectations from me, right? What do you think I should be doing, or what are the primary KRAs of this role? What will I be measured on, right? And so on and so forth. It's perfectly okay to ask him as to what the role is all about in detail, understand it well, and then sign up for it. It's a positive sign. It gives good vibes to the interviewer to say, the candidate sitting in front of me is really interested in the job, and hence he's asking questions. Another thing, what we should do as a candidate is always ask about the growth path, right? That is associated. So, say, for example, and when I say growth path, guys, I don't mean, okay, this is a manager role. When will I get promoted to senior manager? No, that's not really growth path for me. When I say I'm applying for this position, okay, please ask the interviewer, where do I see myself, say 1.5 or 2 years down the line, right? What kind of enhancements, role enhancements can also happen in a very horizontal fashion, right? You could be placed in a cross-functional role. You could work with cross-functional teams in collaboration, right? It's not always movement up the corporate ladder. Please ask, right, what is the growth path associated with this role that shows your interest. It's important to do that. Another thing, please also talk about uh, what is the vision, or what is the plan of the organization for the next 3 to 5 years. That gives confidence to the interviewer that you are interested in investing these many years with them, right? You are a long-term candidate. You're not going to do 6 months or 1 year and just about run away, right? So you're going to be there for a long time. So please ask these relevant questions. And on the other side, like I said, first, when you are in a dicey situation and you don't know stuff, it's perfectly all right to say, I don't know, right? Another thing, when you are interviewing, please show flexibility. Please show learnability, right? Flexibility in the sense you are willing to go that extra mile. You are willing to probably work late hours if required. You are willing to stretch over the weekends if required. Don't be fixated to say that, I can only do so much. Or if the company says, probably you will be deputed to another location for 3 months, you're open to travel, you're open to experimenting, you're open to being at the other location. That's very important. Showing flexibility in your behavior is very important. Beyond flexibility, learnability, right? How have you been in so many years of your experience or during your college life upskilling yourself, reading about industry trends, what are the best practices, right? How do you continue to do that as you progress in your career, right? Upskilling, cross-skilling, learning new technologies, learning new domains, right? It's very important to show that kind of an attitude. Beyond everything, I think confidence and positivity during the interview works wonders, right? And like I just said, we are not, jack of all trades or master of none. Nobody's like that. There's always room for improvement, always room for learning. So show that kind of an attitude that you will be able to pull it off. Of course, giving the best shot is very important, right? Because yes, because you need the job. Yes, because you think you deserve the job. You're the right candidate for the job, but not overselling, right? In my mind, I think these are those quick tips that one should keep in mind, and especially say you have cracked the interview and you get your first offer. Please do a follow up, a follow through. Always thank the interviewer. That's important, right? That shows that you want to keep the connect on, right? Thank the interviewer either through an email or through a WhatsApp message. I wouldn't recommend WhatsApp. Yeah, through an email, right, if you can. Once you have the offer, please build a connect with the recruiter who's hired you. Understand things well in advance. I have candidates who ask me, I'm going to join after 30 days. But if you can tell me which project or which client would I be a part of, I can do some reading on the technology front, or I can do some reading. I think it's always a good idea as a candidate to ask those questions once you get an offer, or once you're on the verge of getting an offer. That shows that you are more interested, or you want to be ready, even before you join, so that you settle in well upon joining. I think that's an interesting thing to do. So you read about them, you read about technology. So once you join this new organization, you're ready to you go set your all set to roll, right? Your learning curve is not very high because you've done some preparation in the past. Yeah, I think these are some quick suggestions from my side, from my practical experience over all these years. And I have been into a lot of HR on both the sides, as an interviewer on the campus front, and as an interviewer for leadership and lateral positions. So open demands. So I come across all sorts of candidates, and these tips that I just gave you, I have picked it up from different candidates who have behaved in very different manner, right? Some people commit mistakes, and those become learning lessons for everybody, and that's what I'm sharing on this platform with all of you. Any questions? I would be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Shikha, so much. I could not be in the beginning, so I tried to squeeze in now, and really appreciate your tips, and as well as how to implement them. I think that was, you said it was 17 years of experience, and no doubt you have it all. Thank you so much for your time and effort. Yeah, it's open for questions, and do we have any question in the chat?
No, Julian.
So if I can ask you, Shikha, how has it, since you've been in this industry for 17 years, how has it changed? I mean, one or two examples of what something that new would make, in this fast-paced world, the old systems do not work as effectively, or we can do it better. So what are one or two examples, if you can give, that you have found effective and according to the modern standards?
Absolutely. And you know what, that's a wonderful question. I mean, I don't know, I see the username as Cogent IBS. I hope that's not me.
That's me.
Okay. I think the biggest change that has happened is that the whole world has gone digital. There's a complete transformation. Let me talk about the HR industry, and that applies to everything, right? All the industries, or all the HR leaders. We have gone through a major transformation, right? Everything has moved from in person to online, right? That's a major transformation. Till about 1.5 years back, I was in office, hiring people, doing employee engagement activities on the ground, right? Doing all that stuff. Today, everything has moved to Microsoft Teams or Zoom calls. I think it's a huge transformation that the entire industry has gone through. We have learned to work from home forever and ever. And in most of the industries, there's absolutely no productivity loss. Especially if you ask me in IT, the productivity has gone up, right? Because people are available all the time. We're all at home, right? So and there's no social life because of Corona. So I think the entire industry that way has gone through a transformation from offline or in person to an online world. All of my HR activities, right from hiring to exit, right, entry to exit, has become online, right? whether you talk about performance appraisal systems, right? All these appraiser workshops are being run digitally, right? Onboarding candidates is happening virtually, induction programs, everything is happening virtually. Those classroom setups, auditorium setups, everything is gone, right? So I think that's a big transformation. And initially, all of us were trying to find ways how to make it effective because nobody was prepared for COVID, right? But today, I think we are all okay. Somebody's okay. Today, I think we've all become experts in the last 19 months how to hire virtually, onboard virtually, do employee engagement virtually, everything, right? It's a complete online world. Yeah, I think that's the biggest transformation. And I have not seen that in the last 17 years of my career, Julan. Yeah.
Absolutely. And here at the chat, we have a question of late Prashant. Is saying of late there has been a huge demand for IT skills since 8 to 10 months or so. People have been shopping for offers thanks to work from home. Any thoughts on how to attract talent and make sure that they join us?
Prashant, you've asked me $1 million question, right? I hope I may.
Correct, absolutely. Where do we find those talents?
I know I hope I will be able to answer this to you to your satisfaction. And that's the challenge, Prashant. Every industry, every organization size, small, medium, large, multinational, everybody is facing, right? Talent attraction and also talent retention. Let's talk about talent attraction since you asked that. Right. So the sourcing channels haven't changed. It's the same old, job portals and LinkedIn and employee referral programs and so on and so forth. But you're right. These days, giving an interview has become very easy. You don't have to take off. You don't have to take permission. You can just minimize one window sitting at home, open the other Zoom window, and attend as many interviews as possible. Right? It's very simple. It's very simple to do that. But I think a strong candidate engagement strategy, and I'll tell you what I do at my place. So once we roll out an offer to any candidate, there are touch points, right? So there are 3-4 things we do. Number one, we engage the candidate through onboarding calls. So when I say onboarding calls, say I have offered a technical lead in the .NET space, right? So the first week you have somebody, say an architect kind of a person who's talking to the candidate. Next week you have a project manager. Third week you have an HR person. So we do onboarding calls in a very structured fashion at 5 to 7 days interval, talking to the candidate, understanding his aspirations, keeping him engaged. That's one. Second, we have a newsletter, an onboarding newsletter, which we send out to our candidates, whoever have been offered, stating that what's happening with the organization, right? Which is their prospective employer, which they're supposed to join 15, 20 days down the line. Third thing, I think the recruiter connect has to be much stronger, right? Checking on the candidate, what's happening, when's the last working day, how is his knowledge transfer going on? I think that is also very important. So these 3-4 things, combined together can give you better results. But Prashant, the market is extremely volatile, and no candidate gives a guarantee that he or she is going to join. But as HR, as recruitment, will continue to keep trying. Another thing that you could try is, and we've tried that, offering some goodies which build some sort of attraction or some sort of candidate loyalty towards their prospective employer. I think that's something you can try. So these are the 4-5 things we do. Yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Wonderfully answered, I must say. I don't know, Prashant, if you have a chance, you can always unmute and, talk more. But I think that's exactly what we needed. So thank you, Shikha, for the answer. Any other question, feedback?
Yeah, hi, Shikha. It's an excellent and practical, knowledge-oriented session. Thank you for your, deep insights.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that it was valuable to you and to the audience. Because it's very easy to, Srini, it's very easy to pick up stuff from books and blurt it out, right? Which doesn't make any sense. Whenever I talk to anybody, I purely take my experiences in life, what I have learned from my experiences and people around me. I think that makes sense, right? People are able to relate because all of us have faced it some or the other day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great,
thank you,
thank you.
Srini. And Srini is the CEO of Cogent and Let Us Chalk It. And so I think he is, he was grasping all the knowledge and he'll make sure he implements that through his HR team. So yeah, Prashant.
Thank you so much,
Prashant.
Srini, for having me here. Yeah, Prashant, sorry.
So Prashant says, thanks for the input. Shikha will provide these inputs to our management. Thank you, Prashant.
Thank you, Prashant.
Yeah, thank you, Shikha, so much. Over to you, Phil. He was doing the thing. I just barged in, but yeah, Phil, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very knowledgeable presentation, Shika. Now, we will move to the next topic for today. So this is still related to the changes with the current situation due to the pandemic. Everything now is digital, and like we do most of the stuff online. So like testing in the digital era will be the next topic. So it's how test engineers' role has changed or evolved, or how is there a negative or positive impact into this kind of field? To present this topic with us is Mr. Deepak Baliga at this digital transformation, quality assurance and testing with professional digital transformation professional having a 23 years of information technology experience spanning across software delivery, pre-sales, solution consulting, quality assurance, and testing, and had an experience setting up greenfield quality assurance functions for both like customers as well as the startups in the digital world, as well as legacy technology eras, and even have like created a testing offshore from scratch for delivery centers. Now here with us, and we'll talk about the topic. Over to you, Deepak.
Thank you so much, Phil. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. So perhaps I can, given that we are IT professionals, I have to fall back on a PowerPoint presentation. I won't bore you with that. So let me just quickly share my screen, if that's all right. Oops. All right. So I hope my slides are visible to everyone.
Yes.
Phil, I hope it's visible. Thank you. All right. So as Phil said, and interestingly, a discussion is a great segue into that one might need to carry, one might need to change over time, and things such as that. So what I've tried to do is over the last couple of years, the observations that I've had specifically testing quality assurance side, I've tried to kind of synthesize all of that, summarize that short, and what you see is fundamentally some of those. So what I've tried to do is fundamentally look at different kinds of testing, how testing evolved over time, how it became a very legitimate role in the software development lifecycle, and over time what kind of skills required by software test engineers in order to perform software testing. And now suddenly with the advent of the digital transformation era, what has changed, and what might one need to acquire in order to stay relevant and to make sure that we do effective testing. So that's basically the idea of what I'm planning to speak to all of you. I would love to get feedback on my thoughts and what you also think about the subject. All right, so very quickly, if you look at the evolution of is what you see on the left hand side. So what you see over here is right from the early or maybe even before the 1990s, let's say about 60s, 50s, and so on. So when software development as a discipline wasn't very refined, so it gradually matured, and in course of the maturity journey, as you can see, it became more methodical. There was the whole angle of getting in standards, certain angles of human practices, human aspects were brought into the whole process. It was not merely number churning or number crunching kind of systems. There was a lot of knowledge base developed and so forth. So if you see the continuum across from the 19 to now, so there have been several changes in the way software has evolved. Fundamentally, what I'm saying is also software development has evolved, the practices of software development, and testing and quality assurance also has changed. So on the right hand side, what you will see is the way software testing has changed over time from the bottom. So if you see, initially it was all about human observation. So quality assurance of software and hardware to an extent, products were completely based on human observation. So there were folks who would observe and then come to certain conclusions, and then there would be some kind of remediation done, and that would be testing and quality assurance. It was not even quality assurance, we can call it just testing. That graduated into methodical observation. More methods were put in, exactly as you see on the left hand side. There were scientific measurement principles which were brought in one by one, and incrementally that started going in. I'm sorry. What happened later was there was a process framework which fitted into the whole software development cycle, and consequently testing also became a part of it, and it became a true blue discipline. That's when many of us got into this role, because it became, as I said, a very legitimate role in the entire software development life cycle. The importance of testing grew at that point. Then came the preventive kind of thinking, because what also happened was software development started maturing to such an extent that one could almost predict, or one could do things in a repeatable manner. And then, the testing fraternity started thinking of preventive testing and preventive engineering to prevent. Then came a lot of changes, and this is where the digital revolution started, transformation. So a lot of architectural maturity came in. Software democratization started, which means the advent of internet, pervasive computing, and value-based engineering started coming into the picture. And in time, we suddenly saw the SMACI, social mobility analytics, cloud, IoT, and so more, and many more. And that disrupted the entire landscape, entire technology landscape, and then began the whole journey of digital transformation. Where is it heading next? I mean, if you see, there is a lot of AI, there is ML, there is autonomic computing, all of that right across the horizon. So this is how the whole evolution has happened, and we all know this journey. So consequently, what has changed in the role of testing and the role of a software test engineer is what I'm going to talk in the next few slides. So as I said, 50s was viewed, I mean, if you look at this, what I'm trying to talk here is basically how testing was perceived in the software industry. So in the 50s, testing was basically debugging. So it was fundamentally looking at code and finding code. So it was extremely narrow focused, very local. In the 60s, the perception of testing was that one does software testing to make sure that a product, a software or a hardware product, works as designed. In the 70s, it morphed into a software testing role. Is basically the role of a software test engineer is to find errors in the product now, not in the code, in the product. In the 80s, it further graduated into we want to validate. But if you see the entire box of these four decades, they were mostly reactive, post facto kind of activities done as software testing. And they were all focused very locally on the product or the components of a product. Then came the 90s, where the prevention kind of a concept came in. So software testing was an important mechanism to prevent issues in software engineering. In the 2000s, the whole concept of prediction and further prevention of issues came in. And later, which is now to maybe in the next 4 or 5 years, one will probably see a lot of autonomous healing, which is the next level of prediction actually. So that's where it is all heading. And if you see the box on the right hand side, from the 90s to now and later, it's all about proactive assurance of quality. So that is somewhere, see the way I can actually explain how testing has evolved around the last 50 years or so, 50 to 60 years. Now, if you see at the side, what does this mean for a software test engineer? So what it means is it puts a lot of accountability on the function called software testing and quality assurance. Accountability for quality of the product, accountability for outcomes which the software product or the hardware product is supposed to provide. It probably needs a lot of generalist attitude, need for knowledge, because testing is no more a siloed kind of an activity focused only on a product or a component. There are multiple other things, which we'll see in the subsequent slides as well. So there is a need for expansive knowledge, which again means that super specialization is, it is required to a certain extent, but it's not the only thing. There is a focus on engineering now because technology has evolved to such an extent that without appreciation of the technology around a software or a hardware product and others, it would be very tough to actually assure quality of it. Now, from a soft skills perspective, nimbleness and agility is one thing, because time to market has become extremely key. Technology disrupts very, very often, and a lot of creativity and imagination in the way one does testing. So that's where the testing needs are from the software and the hardware product market. Look at a couple of digital factors, okay, which affect or influence software testing. So what does software get impacted by? What I've done is I've put them into 4 broad buckets. Technology aspects, which impact the way one does testing, the way one plans, the way one executes, and the way one actually provides value from a quality assurance and testing standpoint. So if you see on the software technology side, across the whole journey to the digital side, we used to have siloed monolithic kind of applications once 30, 40 years back. We started becoming very distributed. So distributed architectures came in place, and today it's the advent of cloud. We had custom applications more or less. So most applications developed very proprietary. And what started happening is that moved because of internet online. And today what has happened is one doesn't even need to own the software. So it has all become software as a service. You have all kinds of as a service platforms, as we know. There were siloed apps. Now it became networked apps at some point in time. Today it's all on the internet. One moved from on-premise to the cloud, which is a huge change for technology and therefore for testing and quality assurance. I would like us to look at all of this from the prism of testing and quality assurance. There used to be only commercial software at one point in time. Today, open source is pervasive. Large enterprises are open to actually open source software for their critical needs as well. There were very limited end users. If you remember a couple of years back, most of the software was used around financial systems, for example, or in the manufacturing sector. But today it's everywhere, which means there are global consumers. The number of users who are using software is large, so there is scale. It's moved from a build to a buy to an integrate kind of a model now, which means there is a need for integrating multiple kinds of functionality from different softwares. And then the biggest thing that's going to hit all of us is the pervasive into everything that we do. And Shikha very rightly mentioned, that's something that one is seeing. So that's something which is coming. Very quickly on the software engineering methodology, like many of us know, one has moved from the waterfall to an agile methodology now. Siloed ways of doing development to DevOps, which means everything is continuous. From very strict roles, which was defined at one point in time, to multifaceted team members. So one need, there are no strict boundaries between the kind of roles that one can play within a team, especially in the agile kind of context. From a highly human-driven kind of approach, which used to happen earlier, everything has become automated, as we know. So that's the keyword. and then concepts of shift left and shift right. Quality assurance is something that is there for, let's say, half a decade now, but today one can see it going mainstream. So shift left is basically embedding quality assurance and testing practices early on development life cycle, while shift right is actually getting critical insights from implementation or production kind of environments, and then utilizing that to ensure testing is proper and accurate. Also, the operating environment. Now we are slightly expanding ourselves from the software itself to the operating environment of the software. Now, if you see there, the environment has changed such that there are proliferated technology platforms. What do I mean by proliferation? There are several platforms today. There are multiple channels. There are devices. The technology that the end user uses, for example, can be anything, and so forth. I mean, it's a very large spectrum of technology platforms that a software can be built in and can be deployed in. Digitalization is a business lever, and this is a very important point. So digitalization is a business lever that enterprises are looking at merely as an efficiency improver for themselves. They are using digitalization or digital transformation as a business lever to change business models. So which means it's become mission critical for us to actually test and assure quality of software and hardware, because it has a direct impact on business. Earlier, the impact would be, the worst case impact would be a little bit of reduction in efficiency, for example, or a cost impact kind of thing. But today it can actually mean disruption of business totally. The race to market and rapid changes is another thing, as we know. I mean, the timelines have shrunk. Non-functional requirements have taken precedence. What are non-functional requirements? So these are requirements which are not directly, which do not directly articulate the functionality of a software. So these are implicit in nature, and these are expected and important, but they may not be very explicitly stated as requirements to ensure functionality of an application. So that's become now suddenly very important. It has taken precedence, wasn't so earlier. Also, the stakeholders for software has increased now. So it's beyond the customer, it's beyond the end users. It can be legal, semi-legal, non-governmental parties, especially given privacy laws and all of that which has come in. So as we know, even as we speak, we know what's going on with all of the social platforms and things like that. So this is the operating environment in which a software operates today. Also, looking at the end user needs now. So if you look at the end user needs, So the end users need a personalized experience now. So it's an individual level kind of a thing. The expectation for all software around is it's highly intuitive. That's almost a differentiator now. A spectrum of end user scenarios, like I said, multi-channel abilities of the software to do things. The way one can use it may be different based on different kinds of profiles of end users and so forth. Privacy and user rights have become paramount for the end user. Security is another aspect which cannot be neglected at all. So all of these, if you look at these four broad buckets that I've articulated over here, so you can see that the software test engineer's role requires that the test engineer was clerical once upon a time, no more clerical, highly proactive, autonomous, consultative with all these stakeholders, is agile and flexible, yet the processes need to be effective and documented to a certain extent. Vast and continuously evolving technology, so has to be nimble and move. Everything is time box. Time to market is very less. Agile, and we looked at that part. The test engineer's role is no more compartmentalized. It's expanded to different kinds of roles. Industry knowledge has become as important as technical acumen for the software test engineer. And last but not the least, testing does not include only the software or the hardware in question. It also includes the operating environment, so which becomes a large world for the test engineer to look at. Now, if you look at all of these aspects, you will see that it's almost two ends of the same spectrum. So it becomes pretty dicey from a role perspective. So let's go very quickly into the next slide. Right. So if you look at it again in summary, so what has moved is from the outside in software centric kind of a focus and quality assurance. it has moved to the inside out kind of a thing. And it's not moved really, it's an addition. So now customer is a king kind of thing in the digital era. So if you combine the two, that's what you will get on the right side, which is the ask from the software test engineer today, which is the ask from the software testing world. Now, from the outside in software centric point of view, there were a few schools of thought when it came to testing. For example, there used to be something called the analytical school, which was spec based, factory school, which was more or less process based, an exemplar school, which said that requirements based testing is good enough, a gatekeeper school, which was like a very strong, the test engineer is a very strong gatekeeper for the entire software to be shipped. And lastly, context almost aligned to the agile way of thinking. So effective testing over everything else, low documentation and so forth. Now what's happened on the right-hand side, while these things still matter, so what suddenly started becoming very important in the digital era is usability, accessibility, outcomes of the software needed to be validated, which means it's not merely the software supposed to deliver to an enterprise, that also needs to be measured to understand the value that it brings to the enterprise. So that started coming into the scope of testing, and that's going to happen even more as we go along. Software at scale is going to be one of the major things, obviously, because of the global reach that software has now, which means performance is critical. Security and data privacy, as we spoke. So all of these, again, if you notice, they are not functional in nature. It won't come as part of requirements of a software. So it has to be understood very implicitly and accorded that level of importance. Laws of the land dictate several software aspects now. So that has to be brought into play while building software, cannot be ignored, cannot be neglected. Software and operated via so many channels today, as we know. For example, if you just look at the endpoints, it can be mobile devices, it can be laptops. Tomorrow it might be wearables and so forth. Hyper automation is again key for building the software, at the same time for deploying and running it. But then again, cost is something that is paramount, and time to market is key. Fast is better than the best. So which means one needs to ship faster. Maybe a minimum viable product kind of a thing, need not be perfect, but one needs to ship fast. So if you look at all of these, it means the following for the digital testing and quality assurance role, as I call it. I call it the full stack digital testing and assurance role, which means the following. So what does one need to know from a digital testing standpoint? So one needs to understand that business needs are fulfilled by the software, but be very aware of the factors that the implementation. One has to be extremely creative and be very holistic and go beyond just the software under test, as it's called. So, and in order to do testing, this whole large world that we are talking now, one will have to be extremely tech savvy and be open to cross the testing boundaries, be it of roles, be it of communication, be it of accessing information. So one cannot be any more rigid about what one needs in order to perform effective testing. Also, there is a huge change in terms of the mindset that is required. So there is to be a very clerical mindset, I would call it, for want of a better word, or a very rigid one from a technology standpoint. It's now moving and moved and will move even more to a consultative mindset, where one needs to almost influence all of the stakeholders around in order to ensure that quality is getting embedded into the product and into implementation. Also, an equal importance needs to be given to technology, business, as well as the ecosystem that is surrounding all of this. So all of these actually, are extremely important for one to become a very effective tester, an effective test engineer in the digital era. Finally, in summary, this is what the from software test engineers in the digital era, and let's call them digital quality assurance engineers. So what you see on the left-hand side is a kind of a pyramid that I kind of imagine the whole technology assurance transformation to happen. We have what is called the quality engineering at the bottom, the last segment at the base, so which is focused on reducing quality debt. So this is all about enabling quality assurance and testing activities. So this is an important facet of every test engineer. Then in tech debt, which is the technology assurance bit. Now, where we were in the last 5 years, let's say, is on the technology assurance kind of a segment. Activities, the kinds of quality assurance and testing activities that we do today would fall into this segment. It is basically assuring pieces of technology, components, software, and so forth. Consequent to the digital transformation initiatives that is so wide and pervasive in the world today, is it's going to business assurance. So customers are no longer saying, yes, please let me know if my technology is good enough or not. They're saying that, please let me know if this software will fulfill my business needs. So please assure business outcomes for me from a digital transformation perspective. So which means assured integrated business ecosystem is what the ask is from enterprises. Further, enterprises are also going to look at it from an increased brand equity standpoint, which means brand assurance becomes part of the responsibility of quality assurance and testing. So it's no more, only software, as you can see. It's no more only technology. It's also business, and it will be eventually brand. And all of these can be put under the whole umbrella of digital assurance, which is eventually about superior customer experience and retention of loyalty of all of this. So on the right-hand side, therefore, I mean, in summary, you see the various kinds of skill sets that might be required from a digital test engineer. So this is what it has morphed to from that early debugger of code kind of a role in the 1950s. So today, this is what I think is required for a very effective digital testing implementation. So what are those, if you look at? So, at the base, there are foundational skills. We spoke of the 4 or 5 schools which we have. So all of those still remain from a mindset perspective for testing. So therefore, it's focused on quality assurance processes, process-driven, methodical, disciplined, with an eye for detail, things such as that. So that's definitely it all. Then we come to the next level, which is end user focused, which means a lot of usability, a lot of non-functional requirements that we spoke of, implicit needs, understanding them, imagining them, bringing that into the whole strategy. Also, the engineering aspect of it to ensure that we have speed of delivery, which means a lot of automation, building efficiency into the whole testing process. This would require skills which are focused around engineering and tech. And there are, terms such as SDET, full stack tester, etc. in the industry today, which highlight these kind of skills. And what's going to happen over the next 5 years, in my view, is that it will evolve into evangelism of focus on business outcomes that the software product is supposed to be delivering to its customers, measurement of that, and ensuring that that works. So which means one should have abilities to trace the testing back to digital business outcomes. Not an easy task, but that's something that is going to be the demand. Expand sphere of influence to all kinds of stakeholders, which happen to be outside of technology world, perhaps, especially in certain industry domains such as healthcare, manufacturing, and so forth. Drive quality and not report it, actually. I mean, it's not a fire and forget kind of a thing, which was the case earlier. So one might need to influence and ensure that quality is getting embedded inside. And last but not the least, fit in as part of the entire digital implementation journey, which means roles are going to get blurred. So one might need to do multiple things, but centrally keeping in mind the quality assurance and testing focus that one needs to do. So this is all in all, in summary as to what we are looking at from a digital test skill set perspective. So this is my observation from the past couple of years. So I would be glad to hear your inputs on my observations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak, for sharing us your observations from your experience on your field. It's really informative. And we have a questions here from Prashant on the chat. So there has been quite a lot of emphasis and big push on building skills on test automation, framework and tools for a budding test engineer. With this, the whole aspect of actually understanding the quality assurance process, methodologies, understanding domain, designing good functional test cases to break the system is fading away big time. Automation is good skill to have, but the whole ability of understanding the application and domain is getting lost. Wanted to know your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Prashant. I mean, at some point of time, as I said, the segment which focused on technology became the biggest, focus area for software testing. So technology and the way to do that also was technology. So that became like a highlight of software testing. But then that's not good enough. I mean, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. So if you look at the apex of the pyramid that we were looking at a while back, it's all about business. It's all about the environment that this business operates in. It's all about maybe the legal frameworks around. It may be about things which may impact software and the way software is deployed and used, all of it, which means it has nothing again to do with engineering processes from a software point of view. So therefore that has to be brought in, and that is inevitable in my mind. So the whole role of a software test engineer will be evolved to an extent where I think the software part will go away. It is just one part of the role. So it would be, a complete quality assurance kind of a thing. So I agree with you, Prashant. My feeling is it will expand. And the domain is getting lost, has to be brought in back. It's very critical to have a domain and functional knowledge as part of the role.
I hope that takes care of your query, Prashant. And our CEO of Cogent, Srini, said it is a great session and saying thank you to Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Srini.
Phil, I have a question for Deepak. Can I ask?
Go ahead,
Absolutely.
please.
Absolutely.
Sure, thank you. Deepak, this is more from a hiring or recruiting standpoint, right? I have been hiring a lot of QA folks, both manual and automation, and performance testers have become very difficult to attract. So I just wanted to understand, okay, one second, let's switch on the video. I just wanted to understand what has drastically changed so much that it's just getting very, very difficult to attract, the performance testing guys. Any thoughts?
Absolutely, and completely agree with you. And like you said previously, dealing with it every day. So but I mean, it's kind of connected to what we were speaking, Shika. So earlier it used to be, non-functional testing, and these are all called non-functional testing. So that was almost an afterthought, and folks would look at it later down the line. It wasn't like a mainstream thing, but today that's become very important, simply because all of the software that we have has to scale. It's all global. It's all deployed for everybody. I mean, it's extremely tough to actually not test these things. So it has become very important to have this. It's mandatory. So you will definitely have a shortage in skills in performance testing and people. Yep. Also, security testing, for example, is something else. Accessibility is going to. Now, how do we manage or remediate this? I think upskilling, like you said earlier, is something that can be done for sure. One might have to perfect the art of doing this upskilling well so that it's effective and we don't drop anything in the process. But I think that's the way to go. Sure. Upskilling as get folks at a very basic level and then move them up the ladder.
Sure. Thank you.
Prashant said, yes, thanks. It was a great session. And Venkat, great session, Deepak. What do you think is challenging? Produce testing or application testing? Product testing or application testing?
All right. So, Venkat, if I understand right, you're differentiating between product and application, as in business application versus. Is that right? I'm just trying to differentiate between the two, between product and an application. When I say maybe yes. When you say application, it's okay. When you say maybe an application is more of a software application, while a product can be a software hardware kind of an integrated thing. So obviously, I think the product testing bit is something which is more challenging, simply because there is a lot of integration which might be involved. But having said that, today, I don't think there is any application which can be isolated or which is siloed. There is just too much interfacing with various other components. It might be networks, for example. It might be devices, for instance. The most simplest of them can have all of that, actually. It might just be operating systems. It might be browsers. It can be so many things. So therefore, every application is a product. The complexity of it might be different. So all of them are challenging equally, if you ask me, based on how mission critical it is, what is the audience size that we are looking at, for instance, what are the demographics of that audience, as in, is it very varied, all of that, what kind of interactions the product slash application has, which will add a level of complexity and so forth. So there are so many parameters that one can look at from a product perspective. So all of them, I think, can be put into the same class. All of them are products, really. I'm not sure if I've answered your question well, but I think both are equally challenging. This is exactly one of the questions that comes to my mind as well. There is always a perception that a software application is much easier to test as compared to a product. It won't be anymore, actually, because every application is going to be extremely complex going forward. We have not even gone to discussions around AI, ML, for example, and all of that. So how would one even test that? How would one make sure that that doesn't go the other way and all of it? And that is a part of an application, not really a product still. So both equally challenging, both are almost the same going forward. Complexities are everywhere. Thanks, Venkat.
And Venkat said, thank you and appreciated it. All right, that's perfect. Any other inputs or questions? You can unmute or send it through chat. So I will just okay, so no more questions so far, but you can still send your questions while I am closing. Well, again, thank you, Shika. Thank you, Deepak, for joining us with our webinar session for today. We are really pleased to have you. Thank you for your time and efforts. And just to let you know, we have our live youth Let Us Talk It webinar every other Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can join the preparation sessions every Tuesdays and Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time by registering at our website, letustalkit.com/youth. So for younger youth group, we have prep sessions Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So this week we have live youth webinar this Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time.